Hello! If you listen to the noise coming from the keto community, the paleo community, as well as the zero carb community, you will think that carbs are the worst thing to have ever happened to us on this planet. They tell us that eating carbs makes us sick, that eating carbs makes us fat, that the practice of actually eating carbs is reducing our life expectancy, and as a result, we should be reducing our carb consumption or actually avoiding carbs altogether as far as the zero carb community is concerned. But is this true? Are carbs the worst thing to have ever happened to us on this planet? That's what's coming up next. Stay tuned. I'll see you in a couple of seconds.
Now, for today's 2020 Idea to Better Health, please welcome on stage Dr. Joe.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Dr. Joe of thedrjoe.com. Now, if you're new to this channel and this is your first time, can I extend a warm welcome to you? This is your home of 2020 Ideas to Better Health. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. And also, please do not forget to click on the notification button because that's how you get notified of future videos that I make. So, carbs. Well, you know, the keto community, the paleo community, and the zero carb community will have us believe that carbs are the worst thing to have ever happened to us on this planet, and indeed that we should be reducing our carb consumption, or as in the case of the zero community, we should be avoiding carbs altogether because carbs are evil, so we should avoid them. But is this true? They cite their doctrine from the view that the dietary guidelines of the 70s and 80s suggested that we should be having lots of carbs in our diet. So because of that, we have become fat, we have become sick, and indeed our life expectancy has been cut short. The question is this true? Because if you think about it, even though the dietary guidelines were suggestive of a high carb, low fat diet, were people adhering to the guidelines? I don't think so. So case in point, McDonald's Big Mac meal, which is, you know, Big Mac with fries, is that a high carb, low fat meal? Burger King Double Whopper cheeseburger with fries, is that a high carb, low fat meal? The commercial pizza that you buy from all sorts of brands, is that a high carb, low fat meal? I don't think they are. In truth, people were actually eating high carb, high fat diet, and that's the reason we become fat, that's the reason we become sick, and that's the reason we are dying young. So to blame the guidelines is actually a misplaced priority, and I don't think that is the way to go. Now, here's another example to tell you that carbs are not the worst food on the planet. Now, I don't know if you've heard of Dan Buettner. I hope I got the pronunciation of his last name right. Dan is a guy who travels around the world. He belongs to the National Geographic empire. He travels around the world. In his travels, Dan has identified communities that have the highest concentration of centenarians, communities that live the longest, communities with the lowest rate of midlife mortality. And Dan, it's an ongoing project, by the way. And so far, he has identified these communities and he labeled them the blue zones of the world because it's global. And what Dan does is he actually lives with these people, studies their lifestyle, their diet, how they live their lives, how their social interaction actually works. And you know, he's written a series of books. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you're interested in getting one of his books. There's going to be a link there. And one commonality amongst the blue zone regions of the world is that they have a high carb diet. In fact, most of them have more than 50% of their diet coming from carbs. So to say that carbs are the worst food to have ever hit the planet and we should be avoiding carbs altogether because carbs are killing us is just plain wrong. Now, the high-fat diet group, in particular the keto group, they will tell you that the Inuits have been surviving on ketones for generations and they're doing very well. The Inuits, they live in very close to the pole. Yes, they've been eating a very high fat diet for centuries and they're fine. That much is true. The problem is that we have to remember that these people have been doing it for centuries, so they have genetically become adapted to that type of diet, which we are not. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as far as I can remember, the Inuits did not make Dan's list of the blue zones. They don't belong to the blue zone. So what that means is they're not people who actually live very long. And I don't think the Inuits live longer than Canadians living in the mainland. So using the Inuits as an example, it's not a good reason for you to dump carbohydrates and start stuffing your face with lots of fats. So saying all this, should you be eating carbs? Of course you should. I highly recommend carbs. But there are two rules you have to obey. The first one is you have to actually avoid, or at least reduce to the barest minimum, your consumption of refined carbs. Processed carbs are the problem, okay? Not just carbs, the processed carbs. They are the problem, because processed carbs will spike your blood sugar levels once you eat them, and there will be a corresponding insulin spike as well. And once you have very high levels of insulin circulating, then you are going to gain weight. Once insulin is high, insulin is going to encourage the storage of fat, and that's what you want to avoid. So as far as I'm concerned, you should be eating carbs, but you have to reduce your consumption of the processed, highly processed carbs. The second rule is that you should eat healthy carbs. What are healthy carbs? Healthy carbs are complex carbs. Why complex carbs? Well, that's because complex carbs are harder for your body to digest, to break down. And complex carbs also contain lots of fiber. I don't want to go into the huge benefits of fiber because that's a huge topic altogether. But complex carbs means, the glucose that is released from your carb meal is gently released, so you don't have a spike of blood glucose. What you then have is a gentle release, which means you don't have insulin spike as well. And with very low insulin levels means you're not going to be storing fat, because insulin is a storage hormone, as I've said before. So is the timing of carb eating important? Well, to some extent it is. By the way, you don't have to follow this rule, but it helps your carb metabolism. And I'm going to talk about it from the point of view of a good time to eat carbs, a better time to eat carbs, and the best time to eat carbs. So when is it a good time to eat carbs? A good time to eat carbs will be in the morning. And the reason you want to eat carbs in the morning is because your insulin sensitivity is at its peak, and your metabolism is also at its peak. So that's a very good time to eat carbs, because your body will easily take care of the glucose from your carbs. A better time to eat carbs, though, is 3 to 4 hours before your workout, before your training session. If you imagine your muscle cell to be like a cup, when you eat your carbs, not all of the glucose that you release from your carb is going to be used up. Some of it is going to be stored in the form of glycogen. So if you imagine your muscle cell to be a cup and you got a glycogen inside it, 3 to 4 hours before your workout, you got some glycogen already stored from the carbs you ate previously. When you then go for your workout 3 to 4 hours later, you use up all of that glycogen. So you are emptying the cup, making room for more glycogen at a later time. So that's a better time to eat carbs. So if eating carbs in the morning is a good time, and 3 to 4 hours before your workout is a better time, when is it the best time to eat carbs? Well, the best time to eat carbs will be soon after your workout. And this is great. It's one of the things I practice as well. I don't have my evening dinner without doing some sort of quick workout in the house. I don't have to go to the gym. But if you go to the gym, great. I have the advanced nitric oxide dump exercise routine now, and that's what I just do before I have my evening meal. And this helps a lot, because when you have a workout and then you eat, what you have done is you've completely emptied the cup. So your glycogen, you use it all up, empty the cup, so you've now made room for fresh glycogen to go into it. So once you do this, you're not going to have any glucose spike at all, because all the glucose that is released from your food goes straight, either you use it up or it goes straight into the empty muscle cells, because they're now hungry. Your muscle cells are really hungry for nutrients, and the nutrients, the glucose will just go straight into the muscle cell. That way you clear your blood glucose very quickly. But that's the best time to actually eat carbs, soon after a workout. So if you avoid refined processed carbs, or at least reduce your consumption of them, and just eat healthy complex carbs, you shouldn't have any metabolic issues. You shouldn't have problems with gaining fat. You shouldn't have any problems with becoming sick as a result of eating carbs. That is how you should eat carbs, and also follow those simple rules that I just mentioned, and you will be fine as far as carbs are concerned. Carbs are not the enemy. Carbs are not the worst foods on the planet. So we should be eating carbs and not stay away from them. In fact, if you are even on the ketogenic diet, you should be eating carbs. And I'm going to do a video about that. I'm going to explain to you why you should be eating carbs on the ketogenic diet sometime in future, okay? If you got some value from this video, as usual, give it a thumbs up. If you got any questions or you got comments regarding high fat, high carb, low fat, low carb diet, go ahead and leave comments below. If you haven't subscribed subscribed yet, please do subscribe as usual. I think that's about it. Until next time, well, this is Dr. Joe signing out.